Everybody knows the stories, especially when you look at like the Whitmer case, 3 more acquittals. That what the FBI does is, like you mentioned, they'll find some guy who's like sitting on his couch being like, no, dang old government, I hate the government. And then they'll come and be like, here are a bunch of weapons. Yeah. Here's a plan for you.
Well, he worked on the task force that would do that stuff. So Garret can tell you how these terrorists
tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's countless examples of this, but it happens all the time. I just pulled up one. Do you guys remember back in 2015, the Garland, Texas shooting? I mean, like, I feel like a lot of this stuff we have to bring it back up so we don't memory hole it. The headline from The Intercept, and this is from 2016. This just came up recently again because I think the case is ongoing. But the headline says, FBI agent goaded Garland shooter to tear up Texas, raising new alarms about Bureau's methods. This undercover FBI agent followed that shooter and never intervened because the FBI is incentivized for cases like this. So then they can come out and say, hey, we stopped the terror. We stopped the terrorism. You guys ever see the meme with the stick?
They're poking the Pepe.
Do
something,
And it's like, that's what this is. And people say, oh, that's just an anecdote. Okay, yeah, the one I pulled up, you could call an anecdote if you want. Does that make it okay? Does that make it right? And this isn't an anecdote because there are countless examples of this type of thing.
We got questions about Las Vegas.
So do we.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody inside the Bureau has questions about Las Vegas, but nobody knows the answers to them is the other crazy thing.
Yep.
Because it's compartmented. And that's the other piece people have to understand. They go, why did you blow the whistle on aliens? Or why didn't you blow the whistle on this? It's like, dude, you can only see what you can see.
You got to be like, dude.
You have to have a need to know, even on cases that are not classified.
You just got to be like, there's nothing to blow the whistle on. The aliens are good dudes. I mean, crap.
They're just turning into cakes in Mexico.
Yeah, I saw that. That was really good. The aliens that they published.
Yeah.
There's a video of someone cutting them open and it's cake. It was cake the whole time.
Garret, were you saying with this Texas shooting and maybe with all of these that the FBI agents will set it up and orchestrate a terror plot just to break up the plot to be like, I was the guy that stopped terror?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
And that because it looks good, it's like a badge of honor?
So in the FBI, there's a system called IPM, Integrated Program Management. And it's basically like a business model for law enforcement, which in the supposed land of the free, that's not how law enforcement is supposed to be working. I'm pretty sure people who came up with this idea never took a constitutional law class. If they did, they need to go back and take it again because that is not how law enforcement is supposed to work in this country, where maybe you find somebody on Facebook who posts something that is derogatory, or you think in your head, maybe we could go with this guy a little bit more. He seems predisposed is what the FBI and the DOJ will use, because they will set up a terror plot like this. And in this case, that guy did go and shoot. And I think a local police officer or security guard is the one who intervened.
He was an off-duty cop working as a security guard, shot him with a revolver, killed 2 men with AKs stepping out of the car.
Wow.
Yeah. Took rounds to the ankle, I think, and the knee as well. So he was shot in the return. But the FBI was sitting there watching it happen because they needed that overt act of terrorism to be able to get the terrorism stat.
Right.
Wow.
I want to tell you the story that I think is the way that it worked. Okay, this is the overarching narrative for people to grasp, and it's the more people can understand this, the better off we are. The FBI was incentivized right after 9/11. My buddy George Hill, who was an FBI whistleblower, he's the one who brought forward the Bank of America records and testified in front of Congress. Bank of America volunteered all their stuff to the FBI. They said anybody who used a Bank of America charge card that was in D.C. on January 5th, 6th, and 7th, here's a list of all the people that did that. So you can run down anybody in D.C. voluntarily. And by the way, here's the prioritized versions who have bought a gun at some point in time using one of our products. They gave him a cross-reference. So that's what George Hill brought forward. And he told me this on my little podcast that we were sitting in an interview, and I'm like, what's the story here? He goes, on September 12th, 2001, the American people accepted a new definition of national security. And the definition is this. It went from protect and defend the Constitution, secure the republic that exists under the Constitution. That's what it previously meant. People die in that pursuit all the time. They have for a long time. I have friends who have. I know Garret does as well. When that happens, that's what we did. On the 12th of September, 2001, the definition became no American dies from terrorism on American soil again. And once you do that, that is a totalitarian position. That is zero COVID. It doesn't matter what zero anything, a no-fail mission equals, you're going to be tyrannical about it. In the military, that's fine. If you have a no-fail mission and things have to get really aggressive and you're going to sacrifice people along the way, if that is that important, they do so. But that's what the mission changed to. And so what we did was the intelligence community and the FBI specifically got involved in hunting down international terrorism, what we call IT. Okay, there's a whole section for it, the International Terrorism Operations Section, ITOS. And those guys hunt down international terrorists. Okay, well, you run out of those because our military is fantastic at what they do. Hurt feelings, break stuff overseas, tie up ISIS, tie up Al-Qaeda, you name it. They were doing that. They were doing that overseas. And so they did. Well, we ran out of like local international terrorists. Like you just didn't go down and find anymore. But there's a big budget. And so they had to keep finding them. So they found a second tier of people. And what we found in the mid 2000s into like 2010, 12, 15, around before 2015, the tier was called HVEs. You've probably heard the term homegrown violent extremists.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what that means. And that means people who are domestic. They're first generation Americans, they're second generation, maybe they're naturalized US citizens, but they live here and they're in the United States. They have a right to be here. But they associate with a foreign ideology. So now you've gone from foreign ideology that's foreign to domestic with foreign ideology. Once you're looking inside of your own house and you're like, who are the terrorists? Then you might as well keep the third tier, which is called domestic violent extremists, which is what we're at right now. That's tier 3, because you're already looking around the house. You go, who else is a threat? How about that guy? He's got a rifle on his shirt and he's got an American flag that looks like an upside down Betsy Ross flag. That's a problem. So now you end up with things that I exposed with my buddies. It was like the Betsy Ross flag, the Gadsden flag, the 1835 Gonzales battle flag, the freaking like a Punisher skull. These are symbols of militia violent extremists because there's all these different tiers under DVEs.
I have to say that if Gadsden, Gonzalez, Betsy Ross, those are that's American iconography.
Yep.
Anyone who says that's our enemy is an occupying force of this country.
They are.
And what did we do, Tim, when we swore our oath to the Constitution of this country? We swore to defend enemies both foreign and domestic.
And the issue now is that there are a lot of anti-American elements in the government, in the DOJ, that don't like this country's history and view the fact that they view the Betsy Ross flag as a symbol of extremism.
Right.
You might as well have British redcoats, I mean figuratively, in the government telling you, hey, we're here to weed out the terrorists. No. The Patriots back in the Revolution flew the American flag, and they said that's a terror symbol. You're rebels.
Right.
It's a rebel flag.
If you think the T goes in the harbor, if that's your mindset, that's where the T goes, then you're a problem apparently to this government. And that's not acceptable because the government doesn't actually work for us at this point. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
I gotta say, it is really crazy when you think about the path from legit.
Look at the biggest simps for government. They're in the birthplace of the American Revolution.
Seriously, but
like just go any blue state, like go to Connecticut. Go to Massachusetts. It's crazy.
And they didn't they move the Springfield Armory out of Massachusetts? It's insane.
They've all left. They went to Colorado. Some left Colorado. They've gone to Texas. It
is really crazy that there is a direct line from a bunch of dudes threw tea into the water to the shots fired at Lexington and Concord. It was a direct line.
Of course.
Because they threw the tea in the water, the Crown responded with the coercive acts. Then the colonists responded with the Suffolk Resolves. So then the Redcoats came and said, give us your guns. They said, no, war.
That's it.
And they could have just, the Crown could have said, we're going to drop the tea thing, and there'd be no revolution.
But that's the same thing as saying the FBI would drop the J6 thing.
Exactly. They can't
do it. They're pot committed to this thing. I mean, I know you play poker, but it's like they've put so much in there. They have everything on the line. And here's what's really wild too, because I found this out from a guy who was a whistleblower to me, or we shared this with Congress. This is how insane it got. They are so desperate to find domestic violent extremists, which is the new push. Like I said, there's ITOS and there's a thing called DTOS. That's the domestic terrorism side of it. DTOS was on the hook they've gone so far and above in 2022, and they've booked so many hours. FBI agents actually bill their hours against a type of case, not case specific, but a style of case, specifically like domestic terrorism, which are 266 designations. The international ones are 415s. So the 266s were so heavy in hours when it came down to the number of people working it, that they were looking at losing the money from Congress for ITOS because they hadn't billed enough 415 hours.
Wow.
And it was $300+ million they were not going to get if they couldn't figure out how to take some of these domestic terrorists and also cross-link them to things. So they were going through chats online to say, Ian, he's a domestic violent extremist. He's got a real problem. Has he ever talked to a guy in the same chat room that an ISIS guy was in, like at some point in time? Can we link him to ISIS anyway? Can we find out if he has some friends that were in Al-Shabaab, even if it's like, multiple jumps?
Yeah.
Because they needed to cross-link it so they could cross-bill these things.
However,
and get the money.
There were several instances. How about Stop Cop City, where we know there were, I think a Canadian and a French guy were active there.
Yep.
And you also have several instances where Antifa were in direct communication with their European counterparts in Eastern Europe, committing acts of violence against government targets. I mean, these people have not
even
been
ranked.
Right.
Christopher Wray himself has said that Antifa, that's just an ideology. And it's like, no, there are
That
legitimate-
ideology almost got me shot when I was in.
But that's
I was in Portland. I did
sure,
Loviz
but
work in Portland in 2020.
that's like saying ISIS is just an ideology, and it's like,
Yeah,
well,
it is.
yes, the like.
But there are people behind it.
What
you know?
what is the? I don't want to get this wrong, and I don't want to insult anybody. What's the exact phrase for the type of Islam that ISIS was practicing? There's a phrase for it, isn't there, that describes the kind of extremist view they had. I don't want to. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to offend someone if I say the wrong one. So I'm not going to.
That's fair.
Because there's Islam where it's
You need
absolutely
a jihad
totally
on
fine.
you today. You probably already. There's,
Oh no, I don't care about that. I'm saying like I know people who are Muslim who are good people.
Yeah,
I don't
oh,
want to.
sure.
I don't want to insult anybody who's a legitimate, practicing good person who wants peace.
Right.
These people were burning and raping people and murdering them
and beheading
It's a-
journalists and
right.
all kinds of stuff.
You have Antifa, that is the descriptor of the cells. So without going into the brand names, there's a bunch of brand name Antifa cells, and they're all interlinked. To go, it's just an idea. It's like, well, yeah, that's like saying like jihadi
FBI
extremism or whatever is just an idea. Sure, but we're targeting ISIS.
They know better. I got TDY'd to Portland, temporary duty assignment. So we were out there for a couple weeks. I got to spend time, what they would call either undercover, they would call it covert surveillance. That's actually the wrong word. It's low visibility.
Yeah.
So it's nominally backstopped, which means if you were to go hey, I didn't run around with a fake ID on me. I could. There are ways to do that, but I just didn't do that. They have a thing called AFID. Many people don't know. It's the Alternative Federal ID Program. So I could get my real picture and a real Virginia driver's license with a fake name on it.
Nice.
And credit card and so on. So you can do that kind of thing. The federal government actually has that program. But I wasn't using that. I was just sitting there. I was Kyle Seraphin, but I just didn't tell you who I was. And I'm driving in a Tacoma truck that I rented from Enterprise. And I'm hanging out and I'm just watching guys from Antifa, women from Antifa too, a lot of them. There's a lot of women running things.
Yeah.
And we had live feed from all the streamers coming into the command post.
Yep.
We had real-time intelligence from all the different groups. DHS was there. The local PD was there. Portland Police Bureau had representatives, FBI, so on and so forth. Different DHS, Border Patrol, if they had their people, because they had, defensive force around the courthouse. And we're watching the coordination in real time. They had FRS radios. You know what those are? Mm-hmm.
No.
They're just if you were to go to Walmart and buy yourself some Cobra radios or some Midland radios or something. So FRS, it's not encrypted, it's in the open. And they were talking and coordinating, sending security elements to check in on supposed feds, some of whom were actual feds, including my buddies.
Wow.
And they were running off federal surveillance agents who were simply monitoring what was going on in case things got violent. And the subjects that we had investigations into. I saw 0 prosecutions of them. We had recorded that they actually called out my license plate. They sent a security element to my vehicle, sent 6 people and surrounded my vehicle to intimidate me, which is, by the way, not that intimidating. I had a big beard. I'm sitting there in a hoodie with body armor on. I've got a rifle by my knee and my handgun right here. And I've got 6 people walking around. They ended up outing themselves because they're also not very bright. But they were sitting there and they're like, you look like a Fed. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm eating beef jerky. What are you doing? It's cold out there. Why are you wearing fishnets? I'm just kind of hassling them because some chick comes up. They're all wearing a thing that says juice with the black power fist on it. JUICE.
It's actually the red salute. It's the communist fist.
Okay, so it's a communist fist, not the black power fist. So they're wearing this on a...
But just to clarify, it is used as a symbol of black power. But what people need to understand is the fist you see Antifa use, BLM use, is originally called the red salute. It's the communist salute, which is the exact same thing as the Roman salute in the inverse.
Perfect.
So the Nazis, the fascists, would do the Roman salute, that's the Hitler salute. Mm-hmm. The purpose of the red salute, holding your fist up facing outward, is to show that the fingers together, while individually are weak, together make a fist. That's the purpose, is a communist symbol of power. And now what's happened is you have people, I've seen college students hold up the red salute marching down the street, not realizing what it means and what it comes from, and they don't care.
Well, the historical ignorance is shocking right now about a lot
so when
of
you
things.
see so here's what happens. You see the Tiki Torch March in Charlottesville, and we're like, this is awful, these are bad, and they're screaming and yelling. A lot of dumb young people who there was, my understanding is that for most of these guys who went there, they weren't told exactly what was going to happen, but they don't
Tiki
care.
Torch one?
Yeah, there's organizers, a large group of them. They know exactly what their plan is, but they need to get as much filler as possible. Now, the media will call them out, rightly so. Call out the extremists. But when the left comes out marching, holding up the communist fist, the media's nothing.
Silent, yeah.